Hi, I'm Andrew Wasson. Thanks for joining me for my weekly guitar blog. It's March 22nd, 2015, and this week we're going to make a study of chromatic blues licks. Now, this week's question was sent in from Chris. He's out in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and he wrote in with this email. I was wondering how to develop chromatic sounds in the blues. My favorite blues solos all seem to have a unique sound of adding in chromatic ideas. What I don't really get is how those notes fit, because they are incorrect against the chords in most cases. Is there a concept to doing this? Any examples you can spare on adding in chromatic ideas in blues would be great. Thanks from Chris in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, USA. Well, thanks for writing in, Chris. You know, when guitarists apply chromatic ideas around blues licks, they'll generally use either a very linear method of straight step-by-step movements, or they'll use a method of approaching scale or chord tones from above or from below by perhaps a step or two. They'll go in and around the chord tones, in other words, that way. And you know, this can be done at any time during the lick, but the most popular areas include the start of the lick and the ending of the phrase. So in this video, I'll cover how these lines get established and how guitar players can start to think about including chromatic parts in their blues phrases. In the first blues chromatic lick I have to demonstrate for this lesson, we're going to be covering the sounds of an A7 chord. And the main idea that I want to shoot for here is to maintain close ties to the chord tones of the A7. And the lick is going to begin into the major third of the A7 chord, which is a C sharp. And then in measure 2, we're going to become a little bit more focused on the root of the chord, which is obviously A. So here's how the first two measures of the lick sounds. Then next after that, I'm just going to lean quite strongly into the fifth of the A7 chord, which is going to be an E, and specifically that'll be here on the 9th fret of the 3rd string. And then the lick is just going to wrap up by taking into the consideration a minor third, major third, into the root of the A once again. So that's the second half there. So here's the whole lick. Once again, keep in mind it starts on the upbeat of 3. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more time. 1, 2, 3. Well, the next idea works toward focusing on the use of chromatic concepts played into extensions that can exist more as surrounding optional tones. Now, this is different than just targeting into a chord tone directly, since the implied extension would act more like a chord tone extension of, in our case, it's going to be a 6th or a 9th. So in particular, it's really going to be an idea that targets into a F sharp, which would probably, really be something more like a 13th if we were adding it on top of the dominant chord, so A dominant 13th. But we're also going to have some sounds that'll, roll around that B note in there too, so that's like a 9th idea on that color. So that's really what we're going to target into on this next chromatic idea. So what I'm going to do is just play around those sounds of that A dominant harmony, and the first chromatic idea, I really want you to listen for it because it's going to be really targeting heavily into the F sharp. In fact, maybe what I'll do is I'll just isolate that to get started with here. This, by the way, is another lick though that starts on the upbeat of 3 of a preceding measure, and it's going to pull us into the next measure. So here's how the first half of this run sounds. 1, 2, 3. And that's that, F sharp. So it's really bringing around that 13th or dominant 6, or well, major 6, I guess you think of that as another option for that as well. Okay, so now I'm going to play the whole lick. The rest of it is going to target into and pass over, a lot of different tones, mainly working off of the flat 7, the 9th, the major 3rd, and then the root. So here's the whole lick now. 1, 2, 3. So you could hear at the end there, I had that movement where it was chromatic from the major 3rd down into the 2nd degree there, the 9th. and then into the root. And then you can hear there's that flat 7 come around into that F sharp again, the G into the F sharp, so the flat 7 into the major 6. And then I'm doing that slight bend there on the 5th fret, you know, just kind of pulling in the sound of the major 3rd off that minor 3rd, and then we're coming around to the root there. So here it is one more time. Keep in mind as well, this is another lick that begins on the upbeat of 3 of a preceding measure. Here we go, 1, 2, 3. Well, the next idea is a very subtle and simplistic one that starts out by operating between a couple of double stop chords. And the double stop ideas are going to be found at the very beginning of this 2-bar phrase. It's going to be joined over across the C sharp note, and, you know, again, we're going to be working over the sounds of A dominant 7th, sort of A blues idea. So here's how the first 2 measures of the phrase, or here's how the first measure, pardon me, of this 2-measure phrase operates. Again, we have some pickup notes there, by the way. It's going to be coming in on the beat of 4, so 1, 2, 3. Now, the second measure of this phrase is going to use a fairly simple chromatic phrase here to link across the same tones, covering over that C sharp of the A7 chord once again. So we're just going to go over across that, point more into the 5th, which is the E of that chord, and then we're going to roll over a minor 3rd into the root of A, and in that second measure, that's where the pickup will take place as well. So that'll be in there. The second measure goes like this. Okay. Altogether, the 2-measure phrase operates like so. 1, 2, 3. Now, what's really cool about phrases like this that are more of a riff idea is that you could just move them over to other chord harmonies found within the key that you're operating within. Now, if we're doing an A blues, our 4 chord is D and our 5 chord is E. So if you're going to move this phrase around, you can just take it up the neck into the D chord that's located at 10th position there. And the lick basically begins off the 5th chord tone. So off the D, we have a A. So the lick would go like this up here. Then you can even go back. And if you're going to cover into the E, you know, that would be up here at this 12th fret E. So you could do, on a turnaround, maybe you could do half the lick or something like this here. So it's a lot of fun to move these things around. And this is kind of an interesting one, how we have the same chromatic concept basically targeted once in the beginning by a double stop idea and then by single note line. So it's kind of a fun one. Well, in my final chromatic blues lick idea, I'll be playing through a few interesting chromatic concepts covering, again, the A dominant 7th chord. Now, this lick begins by approaching all the scale tones on the outer rear edge of the A blues pentatonic. So if you're familiar with your blues pentatonic scale, what we're going to be doing is on the sort of back end of it, you know, sort of more towards the headstock there, we're going to be coming in by a half step into each of those notes that are in the back there at the 5th fret. Just like that. And it's just basically going to be done as sort of one fast full sweep like that. And it generates a really kind of interesting effect. It's got a little bit different sound, you know, so basically something to mess around with as a different color. So I'm going to play through the idea as it moves into the next chord tone, which is going to be kind of like a minor 3rd concept. So it's a really interesting sound into that minor 3rd there. It's sort of a little bit trippy sounding, and I kind of like that stuff. I think it's really cool. So the C natural, though, is the minor 3rd idea against that A7 chord, so we're kind of adding in that minor 3rd color. A lot of times we've been rolling off of it, but never really targeting into it up till now. So from off of that note, what we're going to do afterwards is apply a chromatic pedal tone idea into the chord's root of A up at the 1st string, 5th fret. And this is a chromatic idea is going to function off 2nd string, and it's going to be targeting consistently into the A note. It's going to sound like this. So it's going to go from this G, and and then drop down F sharp, and then F natural. And it's going to wrap up into the E note. So it's a full chromatic line there, descending from G, F sharp, F natural, and then E natural. So here's the second part of it. So now the idea at the end is we're just going to roll through sort of minor third, major third up into the fourth degree of the scale. We're just going to pass this around into that fifth fret of the second string, which is the E, the fifth chord tone, in other words, of that A7 chord. And then from that note, we're going to jump over across to the fourth string, seventh fret, and wrap up on an A note to just basically tie in the end and the resolution, wrap up the whole lick at that point. So here is the entire idea. It goes like this. It's a really different sounding idea. Here it is one more time, a little slower. And one more time up to speed. Well, you know, when a blues lick or riff is developed strictly from the blues scale, it can sound fairly decent and can work reasonably well in most blues situations. However, when a blues phrase can have several scale tones become embellished by half step above or below a scale or a chord tone, then we really find that a change can occur to the overall effect of the blues line. Above all else, adding chromatic ideas into your blues lines injects a unique type of sound and some pretty interesting attention to detail. So use some of the ideas we discussed in this lesson to inspire your own chromatic blues licks and riffs. As you've just seen, it's not overly complicated to do this, and the resulting effect sounds really cool. Anyway, that's about all the time that I have for today. As always, thanks for watching. Have yourself a great week, and I'll catch up with you next time. Bye for now. My Blues Guitar Styles ebook is a masterclass course covering a huge amount of information with 8, 12, and 16 bar blues progressions, classic blues styles, plus all the important chord patterns. There's over 50 pages of information, including sections on blues techniques like slide, alternate tuning, and bending. This ebook has everything the guitar player needs for a solid foundation in blues guitar, including 27 MP3 audio tracks for easy at-home study. Blues Guitar Styles is available for instant download in the View Our Products area at creativeguitarstudio.com.